The Young and the Restless spoilers. Nick lay unconscious in the hospital bed, his once strong and confident form now reduced to an unrecognizable shell, fighting for every breath. His condition had taken a sharp turn for the worse, and every beep of the monitor was a reminder of how fragile his life had become. The doctors, with their clinical detachment, spoke in hushed tones, their words heavy with the weight of finality. They had told Sharon to prepare herself for the worst, to understand that Nick could slip away at any moment. Sharon, standing at his side, felt her heart shatter. She had always believed in Nick's strength, in his resilience, but now, looking at him so still, so pale, those beliefs seemed like distant memories. Her breath caught in her throat as the doctor's words echoed in her mind, "You need to prepare yourself, Sharon. He might not make it through the night." Unable to hold it back any longer, Sharon collapsed into a chair beside Nick's bed, her hands shaking as tears fell freely. She grasped Nick's limp hand, willing some spark of life to return to him, though deep inside, she knew the fight was beyond them. She couldn't imagine a world without him, without his steady presence, without his unwavering love. The weight of that possibility crushed her. Every tear she shed felt like a betrayal, yet she couldn't stop them. Nick had been her anchor, and now, he was slipping away, slowly and painfully. In the midst of this heart-wrenching scene, Carter stood in the shadows. His mind churned with dark thoughts, his feelings twisted with a mixture of desperation and contempt. He had been waiting for this moment for days, for Nick to be vulnerable. But this was something else entirely. Nick wasn't dying fast enough for Carter's liking. The doctors had given their prognosis, and now it was all just a waiting game. That wasn't good enough. Carter needed more. He needed Nick to be gone, not lingering in this pitiful state. Carter's mind raced as he paced outside the room. There was no time to waste. His plan needed to unfold now. He couldn't risk losing his chance. He couldn't afford for Nick to survive, not with all the chaos it would cause for him. The world would remain in balance only if Nick was truly gone. But Carter had a plan. A devious one. He had already studied the security measures Victor had put in place for Nick's protection. The bodyguards, the police patrols, nothing would stop him from getting close. Carter wasn't foolish enough to think he could just waltz in. But he was cunning. He had infiltrated the hospital with precision, assuming the guise of a doctor. It wasn't difficult to blend in with the staff. They were all focused on the critical cases, and the few who recognized him as an outsider were quickly silenced with a fabricated excuse. Inside Nick's room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Sharon, lost in her grief, had left the room for just a moment to collect herself. The timing was perfect. Carter saw his opportunity and took it. With practiced ease, he entered the room under the guise of a doctor. The disguise was flawless. He wore a lab coat, a stethoscope around his neck, and even a mask that hid most of his face. He moved quickly, slipping past the guards who, for a moment, were distracted by something outside the room. His heart pounded in his chest, but he ignored the rush of adrenaline. He had a job to do, and nothing, not even the sliver of doubt creeping into his mind, would stop him. Carter approached Nick's bed with an air of false sympathy. His fingers were cold as he touched the medication on the table. He knew exactly what he was looking for, the poison he had brought with him, a carefully concealed vial hidden in his coat pocket. It was small, but deadly, and it was meant to ensure that Nick wouldn't make it. He had no intention of leaving anything to chance. As he moved closer to Nick, Carter's breath quickened. The man in the bed, so fragile, so vulnerable, was an obstacle to everything Carter had worked for. Sharon's tearful face haunted his thoughts. She would never let go of Nick, and Carter couldn't allow that. If Nick survived, it would complicate everything. The sound of a door clicking shut caught his attention, but it was too late to turn back now. He had come too far. He gently pried open Nick's mouth, his hands trembling, and prepared to place the poison inside. The liquid would slip easily down Nick's throat, quick and sure, sealing his fate. There was no turning back. Nick's life would be snuffed out like a candle in the wind. But just as Carter moved to administer the poison, the door to the room swung open. A guard had noticed something off about the doctor in the room and immediately raised the alarm. Carter froze, his heart racing in his chest. His cover was blown. The poison bottle fell from his hand, shattering on the floor. His chance had slipped away. Chaos erupted in the room as security rushed in. Carter tried to make a run for it, but he was quickly subdued. Nick's life had been spared, for now. But the danger was far from over. As Carter was dragged away, Sharon rushed back into the room, her face pale with terror. She hadn't seen what had nearly happened, but the look in the security guard's eyes told her everything. Sharon rushed to Nick's side, her heart still pounding. The thought of losing him, so close to the edge, had shattered her. As she looked at him, still alive, she couldn't shake the overwhelming fear that things were far from safe. Carter's twisted game had only just begun. If they wanted to survive, they would have to fight harder than ever before. The battle for Nick's life, and their future, had just escalated into something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The horror of what almost happened lingered in the room like a shadow, as Sharon clung to Nick, praying that this wouldn't be the end. But the threats were multiplying, and it was clear that the real fight had only just begun. Nick's body lay in the sterile, flickering light of the hospital room, but something was different now. The machines, once beeping with a hollow rhythm, had slowed. His skin, cold and pale, seemed to finally be succumbing to the damage done, but deep within him, there was still a spark, a flicker of life that refused to die. Sharon, exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the last several days, sat at his side, clinging to the belief that Nick would wake up. He had to. He couldn't just vanish like that, not when there was so much left unsaid, so many unresolved battles, so many people who depended on him. Nick was a cornerstone of the entire storyline, a character whose absence would send shockwaves through every corner of the narrative. His legacy, his family, his connection to Sharon, and even the chaotic web he'd tangled himself in, all of these things were too important to simply let him go. He was too vital to the show, too tied to the heart of the drama. No, Nick couldn't die like this, not after everything that had happened. But as Sharon clasped his hand, whispering her hopes and desperate pleas into the sterile silence, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling of something worse lurking on the horizon. The moments in which she believed Nick's survival was a guarantee felt increasingly distant. Was it possible that Carter's threat wasn't over? Could it be that Nick's survival was only temporary, a flicker before the inevitable storm? Carter had almost succeeded. The vile truth of his actions had been on the cusp of unfolding, and yet, in the chaos, he had failed. But failure didn't seem like Carter's style. He had a mission, and no matter how twisted it was, no matter how dark the road he had to walk, he would achieve his goal. Or he would be exposed, caught in the web of his own malevolence. Who was behind Carter? Carter was far from a lone player in this dangerous game. He was just a cog in a much larger machine, driven by a ruthless and calculating mind who held all the cards. The question that gnawed at Sharon, and likely the audience, was, who was pulling Carter's strings? There were several plausible theories, and each one painted a picture of increasing peril for everyone involved. Victor Newman, the first and most obvious suspect, was Victor Newman. The patriarch of the Newman family had never been one to shy away from using underhanded tactics to protect his empire and his family. Victor had an intricate network of loyal followers, and Carter could easily be one of them. If Nick was seen as a threat to Victor's plans? Either because of his actions in business or his relationships, Victor would not hesitate to eliminate him. The Newmans' unrelenting pursuit of control, even at the cost of human life, could easily have led to this darker manipulation. Ashland Locke. Another intriguing possibility was Ashland Locke. Having recently made waves in the Newman family dynamic, Ashland's ambition and desire to control everything around him could have been the catalyst for pulling Carter into his schemes. Ashland's willingness to play dirty, coupled with his unpredictable nature, made him a potentially dangerous ally, or a mastermind pulling the strings in the shadows. Nikki Newman, while it may seem far-fetched, could Nikki herself be complicit in this? If Nick's actions threatened the family in a way she couldn't see past, or if Nikki was manipulated into believing Nick's survival would hurt them all, she might have quietly sanctioned such actions. There had been moments in the past where Nikki's judgment was clouded by loyalty to Victor and the family, making her a potential covert participant in this sinister plan. Carter's personal vendetta. Another twist in the narrative could lie in Carter's personal vendetta against Nick. Perhaps Carter's actions weren't solely driven by outside orders but by a deeply personal resentment toward Nick himself. Nick's success, his relationships, or even his connection to Sharon could have fueled Carter's growing animosity, making him willing to cross every moral boundary to eliminate his rival. In this case, Carter might be acting out of pure revenge, unaware of the larger game at play behind him. A new, unknown villain. Finally, there's the possibility of a completely new villain, a shadowy figure whose identity remains hidden for now. This individual could be someone with a grudge against the Newman family, an adversary who is quietly working from the shadows, pulling strings and manipulating Carter as part of a larger strategy to take down the Newmans once and for all. This new antagonist could have a personal vendetta either against Victor, Nick, or the entire family, and using Carter as a pawn could be just the beginning. Will Nick die? As for Nick, the burning question remains, will he die or will he survive? Given Nick's prominence in the show, his death seems unlikely, especially in such a senseless manner. Nick's story arc, his relationships, and his ongoing struggle have been central to the Young and the Restless for years. To have him exit the show this abruptly, without a major payoff or resolution, would be a disservice to both the character and the audience. However, the road ahead is anything but simple. Nick's health remains fragile, and while his survival seems like the ultimate goal, the question of what condition he will return in looms large. If Nick does survive, it will likely be in the context of a much larger story, one that explores the aftermath of this near-death experience and the psychological and emotional toll it takes on him and those around him. Nick's survival, assuming it happens, may come at a cost. The stakes will only rise as Carter, and whoever is behind him, continue their efforts. There will be more attacks, more traps, and even more dangerous revelations lurking in the shadows. And if Nick does manage to make it out of this, he'll likely be changed forever, his relationships strained, his trust in those around him shaken to the core. In the end, Nick's fate remains uncertain, but it's clear that whatever happens, it will be a pivotal moment in the story. A game changer that will set the course for the next chapter in the lives of the Newmans, their enemies, and everyone caught in their web. Carter, however, remains a wild card. His dark journey has just begun, and the sinister plans he harbors will undoubtedly continue to unfold, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Whatever his ultimate goal is, one thing is certain, the world of the Young and the Restless will never be the same.